So the built-in editor for most Linux operating systems is going to be either VI or Vim. So VI is the earlier version. Vim is like the more enhanced version of it. They basically function pretty much the same way. It's just some might be installed in your system and some might not. You might also find it helpful or find it easier to get around using a small application called Nano. And so most systems like your Mac will come with Nano installed. And I think you'll probably prefer to use Nano because it gives you a little bit of extra instructions at the bottom of the screen and behaves very much like most of the editors that you might be familiar with. So I'll show you that first. So ls, if we wanted to edit a specific file, we can type nano and then the file name. And again, I'm using the tab to auto-complete it so I don't mess it up and fat finger the name. When I hit enter, I'll be taken into the editor. And this will behave kind of like most editors that you're familiar with. You can type some text. And then when we're ready to execute commands like saving it and exiting back out of Nano, most of the commands are right here below. And so you can see in order to write out the file, I would use Control O. And then it prompts me, is this the file name you want to write? And I can just hit enter. And then it tells me that it wrote one line, so the file has been saved. And now I can hit Control X to exit back out of the command line. Now if I wanted to see the contents of this file, I can use the cat command. So cat file, and I can see the text inside of that file. So this is super helpful. In addition to being able to see the text inside of the file, if it's really long, you might want to use more. And so more has the same basic functionality, but more will actually paginate it by one full screen of content, and then you'll have to hit the enter button to scroll through the rest of the file. Cat will just spill it all onto the screen, and so if it's a really long file, you'll see all the contents rip by really fast, and you'll have to scroll back to see the rest of the content. More is designed to function more like, hey, I expect there to be a lot of content in this file, so when you start showing it to me, I want you to stop every once in a while and then let me hit enter so I can go through the rest of the file. And you'll be able to hit enter, and if you get to the bottom of the file, you'll just hit enter again, and it will take you out of the displaying of the file and back to the command line. So more and cat are just kind of depending on how much content you think is going to be in the file, more or less useful. I generally will use cat first, and if I see there's a ton of content in the file, then I might use more so that I can then go back through it a little bit more carefully. So more and cat, super helpful for reading files. But editing files, Nano is going to probably be your best bet. I will kind of throw you a life preserver. And so for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to walk you through how VI or Vim works. I call it a life preserver because it is going to be most frequently the default editor on most Linux systems if one was installed. So it won't be necessarily Nano or Pico or Emacs or Notepad or Notepad++. It will most likely be VI or Vim. And so by default, there might be times where you get thrown into it because you're required to maybe edit a file, and you will realize very quickly that it doesn't behave the way most other editors work. Have either of you guys used Vim before? Okay, so just a quick walkthrough of the most important commands, and then you may choose that you like it, and you have to use your hands on the keyboard, so it is pretty efficient to write code in it, but it's a unique experience because it doesn't operate like a traditional editor. So if I wanted to edit that same file in Vim, I could type Vim file, and right away you'll notice that it looks a little different than you might expect. So I've got these little lines throughout the file that are telling me that like there's nothing there. In addition to that, we get a blinking cursor, but if I were to just start typing text, it would be, right now we're in the command mode, so it would be not as responsive as I expect. So to get into the mode where you're going to start inserting text, I usually will type I to insert. And so once I type I to insert, you'll see at the bottom of the screen I'm in the insert mode, and this basically means I can start typing text and it will start taking those characters and like saving them in the file. So this is done from insert mode. So then you're gonna be like, well, I'm stuck here and I can't navigate around. How come I can't navigate up and down and like move around in the file? Like I should be able to do that in a normal editor. We can't do that in insert mode. Insert mode is for inserting text, right? When you're done with insert mode, you're gonna wanna hit the escape button. So when in doubt, if you get put into Vim and you have used insert and you've changed some text, you can get yourself back into command mode by hitting the escape button. Most people will hit the escape button a bunch of times because they want to be sure they've hit the escape button and they're out of insert mode. So you will typically hear something like this, right? And that's the developer hitting the escape button a bunch of times because it's not a toggle, it's not a light switch where when you hit escape the first time it takes you into the mode, and if you hit it again it takes you back into the other mode. You just want to hit it a couple of times so you can make sure I actually didn't miss hitting the key, because all it does is take you from the mode you're in out and ready to accept commands. And so now it will accept a command, and the command that we want to get back out of this file and write it is, we'll hit the colon to be down here and ready to accept a command. We're going to either do one of two things typically. We're either going to want to quit without writing the file at all, or we're going to want to write the file and quit. So to quit without doing anything, it's just Q and then a bang or the exclamation mark. So that quits this file and doesn't accept the changes that I just made. If we wanted to write the changes, then we would use a WQ that would write the changes we made to the file and exit back out of the file. So for now, I'm going to write and quit, so I'll hit enter. That takes me out of Vim back to the command line. So if you accidentally get stuck inside of Vim, remember your eject is to hit the escape button a couple times, ensure you're in the command mode, hit colon, Q, bang, you're back out. If you need to edit a document, then you're going to want to make sure that in order to make changes, you have to hit the I button. So you're going to hit escape a bunch of times, then you can hit the arrows up and down on your keyboard to get to wherever you want to start inserting text in the document. Then when you're at that position, you're going to hit I, then you'll be in insert mode, you can start typing characters. Then when you want to move around again, you want to get off of that line and you want to get to someplace else in the document, you're going to hit escape a bunch of times. That'll take you back to command mode, and you'll be able to then navigate around up and down using your arrows. You can also navigate up and down using HJKL or JKL semicolon. Can't remember which one because I don't use it that much. But that spacebar row is actually the same like arrow, like up, down, left, right. And so again, rather than even having to move your hands to the arrows, the idea is when you're inside of Vim, you can do everything you need with just the keyboard. You don't need the mouse, you don't need to navigate around, you literally should be able to reach everything you need. For that reason, the escape key is kind of far, and so some engineers will actually remap their keyboard so that the escape key is actually mapped to the caps lock, so it's easier to hit and reach. And then they basically just use the escape key as their caps lock, and their caps lock is the escape key. It's just easier to get in and out of the mode. So don't be surprised sometimes if you sit down in a workstation and you can't get the caps lock to work. It might be remapped to the escape button because it's just a little harder to hit it accidentally. And very rarely do you use the caps lock while you're inputting code, so it's a pretty good swap. So hopefully that's enough for you to kind of be functional inside of Vim and functional at the command line. And now you have at least a little bit of a reference as to like this is what you need to do to create files, delete files, move files, create folders. And you can use the move command on renaming folders as well. So if you give it a folder name, tell it the new folder name, then it doesn't necessarily move it anywhere. It just says, okay, I want the same thing to have this new name. Questions?